So welcome to episode 2 of the Asset Mindset podcast. Episode 1 was kind of a nice little intro as to what we're going to do with the podcast, what we envision for the future. Episode 2 is going to have a little bit more structure to it, right, Jordan?
That's right. Yeah, we're going to get a little bit more in depth here. So
we've got a nice little lineup. So the way that we want to start these episodes out, we have kind of a newer concept that we call the feed. And this opening segment to each episode for the feed is basically Jordan and myself are going to take turns finding a social media post, Instagram reel, a YouTube story, or TikTok or whatever that is, something that we found that kind of made us think throughout the week, or we saw it and it really gave us some inspiration, or it maybe even solved the problem for us or answered a question that we had. So in this segment, we're going to find a reel, a story, a short, and we're going to share it with you guys. We will link what we share in the Asset Mindset Instagram page in the story, so future listeners, you can easily go back into our story highlights, find the episode that it correlates to, click on it, and you'll be able to kind of feel what we feel and see what we see, and then learn from the reel yourself. I think it'll be a pretty cool library over the next little while. We put a few months of reels and stories up. I think we'll have a pretty good archive of some cool stuff. What do you think, Jordan?
Absolutely. I think it'll be exciting to be able to look back on everything that we've looked at. There's so much good content out there, and it'd be cool for you listeners to hear and see what it is that we're taking in and what we're basing a lot of content off of, a lot of the people that we follow to help us get where we are at currently, and that we're constantly following to get us to where we're wanting to go. So I'm stoked. In fact, this week it was actually my turn to pick the reel. So
bingo. What'd you pick? What'd you find? What did you find, Jordan? Share it with us.
Well, we're gonna go ahead and watch a little Patrick McDavid right here. Awesome clip. He looks real good right here. Buzz cut, dirty stash, and he's just laying down loads of knowledge here. So let's play it for him.
Let's do it. Let's play it.
Your identity pulls your income. If your identity is a $500,000 identity, it's mathematically impossible to be below $500,000 for a very long time. Some of you guys are saying, Pat, what the hell do you mean by that? Will you work for $20,000 a year? Will you work for $40,000 a year? $100,000 a year? You've said yes to one of them, and whatever they're paying you right now. Do you know why? Because that's your identity. It's impossible for $500,000 a year identity to be accepting a $60,000 a year salary. You got to fix this identity on how you think and what you think you deserve, and all of a sudden you start pulling all of that in your life. I don't know what it is. It's just that's how it works.
I love the identity factor, right? It is so crucial that we understand that we are only going to obtain or accomplish what we identify ourselves as, which doesn't mean that we need to put a cap on ourselves and that we can't have big aspirations and aspire for greater things, but we have to get there mentally before we can expect ourselves to actually tangibly or intangibles get there, right? So it's important that we get there mentally. We figure out how to identify ourselves. Like he said in there, you can't have a $500,000 a year, identity earning a $60,000 a year salary. Those do not coincide very well. So it's really neat to hear that, and it transfers really well into what we're about to talk about today with investing, size of deals, scaling deals, and it's exciting stuff. I truly believe that this whole podcast, the Asset Mindset, is based about figuring out our identity and where we are at currently, where we identify as, and where we are trying to, or what we are trying to identify as. I feel like we're getting a little political here. This has nothing to do with politics, by the way. This is completely mental, aspirations here, right? Getting ourselves into a place where we can actually do things, operate at a very high performing level, and feel very successful within ourselves.
Exactly. You had a couple of clips, you had 4 or 5 good clips that we easily could have talked about for this feed segment But I'm glad you settled on the Patrick Bet David one, because it, like, I myself suffer, or have suffered, and I probably still do suffer from this, is I had a smaller mindset for the value of my time than what I should have. Like, it's gotta. I'm still breaking the chains from the whole 9-to-5 desk job deal. It still has its roots dug into me pretty hard. And what I've found is there have been multiple opportunities presented to me for side work and quote unquote side hustles that I could easily accomplish and that I could put my time and effort into, but I ultimately end up trading my time for money. And knowing my value, what's my number, is just, it really starts, it helps me to evaluate those things on a case-by-case basis and say, okay, this one does not meet the value that I have for myself and my time. It's gone. It sucks because there's a lot of things that I've even become emotionally attached to, personal ideas, personal small businesses that I've thought about starting or even put time into, and I'm just like, you know what? I can't focus on this anymore because the value that it's giving back to me is not worth the input. It's sad but true, and it's hard to come to an evaluation about stuff that you are creating yourself, but I think it's a hard reality that we all need to sit down and come up with. And I think Patrick says it best. What was the word he used? It was let's see, your identity. That's all it is. It's an identity. Once you have an identity and you are shooting for the moon, essentially, you're really going to start to weed out those projects and efforts that just aren't worth your time. So I'm glad you shared that, Jordan. I loved it, man. I think that was good. For the listeners, I hope you guys have some feedback as well. If that video struck you guys, or, struck a chord or has some meaning to you, comment, share. Let's hear your feedback.
Yeah, we love to look through and see what we're doing great, what we are wanting, requested by you guys to hear. We love looking into those things. So I'm actually really looking forward to hearing what your guys' thoughts are on that clip. So give us a comment on there.
Good choice for this, for the very first feed segment. Good work, Jordan. I like it. So let's dive right into the main body of this episode. Let's dive into the main topic. What we want to do is, we've already introduced ourselves more or less, but now we want to introduce ourselves on a criteria level. What is Jordan doing? What am I doing in the real estate investment, in the asset world? What are we doing currently and working on that kind of, why should you as the listeners see us as any sort of, why should you take advice from us, or why should you even listen to us to begin with, right? It's a nice way to present ourselves in a way that, we're not professionals in this. We don't have thousands and thousands of rental units and multi-million-dollar projects going, but we have dabbled in things enough to where we've learned a lot of lessons. We've failed a handful of times. We've succeeded in a handful of times. And the whole purpose of these next couple episodes is to introduce ourselves on a working basis. And we decided, what did we decide, Jordan? It's your week for this, right? We're going to dive into some of the work that you've got going.
Yeah, I'm super excited to share. Like was said earlier by Corey, we're not at that point where it's like, oh, we can lay off the gas and lay back and enjoy the ride. We're definitely trying to, smell the daisies on our way, but we're definitely, pedal to the metal. And it's been interesting to see, from deal one to now where my portfolio is at, what we're going to be mostly talking about today, how I got there. And as I've been reflecting a lot about what things I was doing to create my own identity, as we mentioned earlier, and to create my own routines, create my own, confidence in deals, right? Because there is a factor there. It's been fun to reflect on those things and organize those thoughts to share with you, the listeners, today. So, I'm excited. I'm excited to get into this, Corey.
Me too. I'm excited to hear about it. I mean, we've talked about your deals going on in Florida and things that you even have on the table right now. It's exciting to hear about. So go ahead and give us the rundown, Jordan. What what was your very first real estate deal? And let's even roll into what you have in your portfolio at the moment. We'll kind of, I think we talked about this before the podcast started, but we'll kind of save some of your future projects for another episode. But let's go in time from when you started up until now. Give us a rundown of what you've got accomplished.
Awesome. So, it's interesting. Our very first deal is not what we intended it to be. So my wife and I had just got out of the door-to-door industry. And when I say get out of, I mean taking like a 2-month, 3-month break. And we thought we were going to head on real estate. So we found a home. We did a lot of looking. We looked for probably a year and a half. We definitely were victims of paralysis by analysis. And finally we said, okay, we need to set the parameters that we can feel confident in on like nailing a deal down. We're not going to have the home run deal on every deal. We're not going to have all these check boxes checked off. But if we can have a deal that we, comes across our table that meets a certain criteria or at least falls within a specific parameters, we can feel confident about moving forward in that deal. And so that's what we did. We were very fortunate to find one. It was in Florida. It was a 3-2 single family residence that we had full intentions on flipping. And as we started, it's funny, we actually
what drew you to I don't want to interrupt you, but what drew you to Florida to begin with? Especially for a fix and flip.
Yeah. Well, at that time we were living in Florida, right? So
gotcha.
That's where
Okay.
we were looking. Yeah, we were just looking in our own backyards. Now, fortunately, I had looked in other places because I do have contacts, relatives, friends, acquaintances, right, in other states that, talked about their markets. And I just felt really good about Florida. And fortunately, we were there. It was our backyard. So finding that deal there came really easy in the sense of not having to address the whole long distance factor right away, but it by no means was it easy. We definitely took, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of time finding this deal, and we actually were out of state when we closed on this deal. It was a really interesting transaction. We were on the other side of the country, but we closed on this deal, wired funds, got the deal, closed in November. Well, we were out of town for the holidays and weren't able to get back until the new year, January. So that house, if you could imagine, I had anxiety through the roof that I had just closed on a property, didn't have the keys, didn't have the door locks changed out, had none of anything to make sure that house was going to not be broken into or any issues with it.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So,
especially over that break.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking... It was early in November, so we were definitely, just shy of, but essentially 2 months, right, with that home sitting there. And I had keys to it,
gosh.
but I was 1,500 miles away, so there wasn't much security there. So we got in, to Florida from our vacation or whatever, our holidays, and it was cool to be able to get in the home. And our first day, Corey, oh my gosh, my wife and I, we get in there, we bust the doors down, right? And not really, we open the doors, get in there, and we just start hammering out work. We're ripping up the carpet, and it's old 70s carpet, right? Like green and that brown, like very shaggy 70s carpet.
I can imagine.
It's got the old person smell in there. It was just a phenomenal. We were. We should put some pictures of this project up. We're gonna put some photos up on the Instagram feed for you listeners to see this. So we got to get an idea of what we're looking at here. Absolutely, we'll definitely have them available for the listeners. So we get in there, and our first day, we were staying at a friend's actually out there in Florida, and so it wasn't livable yet, but our plan was, hey, let's live in this thing. We'll suck it up for a little bit, get one room ready, live in it, and then we can start working on the other house. Well, our first day, we just were like, no, we can pound this thing out. We had all the carpet out. We started loading it up, taking trips to the dump, and we were just pounding it out. We thought we were gonna have this house done in gosh, a couple weeks. And little do we know that after getting into the plumbing and the electrical and some of these other things, there was one thing after another that we were like, oh, we didn't expect that. Oh my gosh, there is a leak here. Or, oh, there's this. Now, fortunately for us, Corey, we were so fortunate. We really didn't have major issues, but this home sat vacant for probably 6 months. And so it had a little bit of neglect. The individual that lived in there prior was an older individual, and the home was just kind of neglected, right? So if you can imagine, there was just a lot of updating and updating that needed to be done, not just aesthetically though, right? Kind of into the bones. So it was an exciting experience, but we got into it and we started flipping it, we had a very interesting perspective change. We had previously almost bought a brand new townhome that our friends actually bought in, and they started Airbnb-ing theirs out. And theirs wasn't very close to the beach. Ours is a little bit closer. Ours is about 15 minutes from the water, the Gulf. And so, yeah, it's a neat place, right? Like, it's not right on the water. It's kind of tucked away. I'm super excited to post these photos. I am actually stoked for people to see. I don't know why. It's my perfect getaway because it's surrounded by trees. I'm close enough to like neighbors and Walmart, but I don't see them. I'm just surrounded by like trees. So it's neat. It is. It's a great one. So anyways, our perspective did start to change though. We realized that, hey, actually, rather than selling this home and making, a decent amount of capital, we could wait on the appreciation of it, which looking back now, I am extremely grateful I did, and make a little bit of rental income. Now, fortunately for us, Corey, we had a very successful door-to-door run prior to this, and so we were able to buy this house in cash, and then we were able to also do the entire renovations all in cash. We didn't have to borrow money, and not everybody has that ability to do that, but we were very fortunate.
That's great. Well, and I feel like having that amount of cash and having it ready to go, it also doesn't mean that you're just ready to throw that money at any deal. I feel like you were probably a little bit more frugal, or probably a little bit more picky, might I say, in finding the deal, because you're like, look, if we're going to pay cash, we're going to have every dollar mean something. It's not just going to be, well, let's hope this deal works. That's just from an outsider perspective. If it was my own money, I'd be that same way. I'd be real picky about it. Was that the case for you guys?
Yes, absolutely, to a T. I mean, we were extremely picky. As I mentioned earlier, paralysis by analysis for literally a year and a half, I would say.
Gotcha.
So we were very
because
picky.
You're dealing with your own money. You're dealing with your own savings account, really.
That's exactly what it is, right? And with us wanting to get out of the door-to-door industry, which we didn't really get very far, we're back in it. But we intended on, hey, we're gonna find a deal that is gonna get us out of the door-to-door industry. We are going to find that deal, and this deal would have created, a decent amount of, capital for us if we were to have sold it at that time. But I'm extremely grateful that we didn't. It's funny actually you bring that up, because throughout the flipping process, we actually had this house turn in about 45 days. So it took us a month and a half, and yes, we were all the way moved in. We decided that we were going to hang in there for a second. We were going to get out of our friend's, place. They were generous enough to let us hang out there, and then we were going to figure out where we were going to go next. Interesting enough, we obviously had the perspective change, decided to furnish it, and so we just started furnishing it how we would have wanted it to live there, because we were living there, and hopefully have it be done up right to where we could just, whenever it's time to go, pack up, leave, and it was already furnished, ready for somebody to actually go and stay there. So yeah, it was really nice. It was a cool experience for us, and I'm really glad we didn't, because we had people throughout the process, day 18, day 20, whatever, right? Like, we had people all the time coming, because you can look up when, homes have sold on the MLS, and we had people all the time coming up and just saying, hey, we'll take it as is. Like, don't even put the new roof on yet. Like, we'll take it as is, and we'll pay you, I mean, 70,000 more than what we had paid it for at that time. I remember we got that home for 110, Corey. And we were able to put in, I want to say a little over 25, or probably 30. 30 is a fair number. 30,000 in repairs. So we're about 140 in. And I had somebody come and offer me cash 185, and I hadn't even done a roof AC unit yet. Hadn't done the ducts.
Oh my gosh. How tempting was an offer like that?
Well, going back to the identity thing, once we decided, it was so interesting. Once we decided we are going to Airbnb this out and create a passive income source. We are going to have income come in passively without even having to work. Now, obviously, like, we still have to manage it, right, to some extent, right, or manage the managers and create systems. But once we caught that bug, it wasn't. We were like, no, that's not worth it. We can make that. We can make that.
That's amazing. It's amazing. I'm now I know why you picked that Patrick Bet David feed, the reel for the feed, because it ties exactly into that, man. Like, you could have, man, for the listeners out there, like, even for myself, it would have been real hard to turn that down, but to have a grander vision of like, no, we could make way more money in the long term. That's not my value. That's not my identity. We're sticking with it. Dude, props to you guys. That's impressive.
Well, and that's like what's really cool about it, right? Is we had a goal and we had an idea of, hey, we're going to flip this, generate a bunch of income, and then go and get into another deal, right? And our identity grew, is what I would like to change it as, right? Like, our perspective got broadened and our identity grew, our goals got bigger. We had accomplished the goal. I mean, we could have flipped it and made a bunch of capital, but now we flipped it and turned it into a passive income source, and we actually have a lot more equity in the home now. In fact,
absolutely, yeah.
Within just the last year, we had a home that sold, same floor plan and similar square footage, for $225, and there's a brand new one being built with the same square footage and similar floor plan for $285. Now, that one hasn't sold yet, but it is being built. It's almost finished. So just like catching that idea of learning, like, throughout the flip and looking at other homes and trying to figure out, okay, like, I know we could for sure sell it for this, but obviously during the flip and during the process, we were still working on educating ourselves, right? Like, we were still looking at the market, still looking at similar homes going off, still looking at what was going on around us, so that we knew that when it hit the market, we were going to be good to go. And it was crazy once, like, we educated ourselves to the point where it was like, hey, this is going up extremely fast. Like, it's very rapid. Why don't we just wait? We can use this, create passive income right now, and then if we have to borrow against it to buy into bigger deals, we can do that, or we, don't have to. Either way, right now I know we've got a decent amount of equity in that home that we could borrow on to, go get into a bigger deal. So,
well, exactly, especially where, like, you had the forethought of doing a cash deal with your own money. It gave you that option to have it as something to borrow against. I think that was a brilliant move on your part.
Well, thanks.
I need to know where you got your crystal ball from.
Yeah.
I need to order 2 of them.
That's right. Well, so I wish it was always crystal clear. Right now it seems a little foggy. So, but
well, dude, as long as it worked when you needed it to, that's impressive. So that was your you and your wife's first jump into the owning other real estate besides your primary residence, then, right?
That's exactly right. Yep.
And then that led you into you now own a handful of some multifamily properties as well. Did that kind of? I'm always curious about this. Was that first one kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off, and then it was like, okay, that really wasn't that hard of a process. Let's do it again, or was there some time in between that first deal and deal number 2?
No, it was like I mean, like ripping the band-aid off, or I always like to, if you remember when you were little, like you scrape your knee and mom comes and puts hydrogen peroxide and you're like, oh, it's this big anticipation. But then after like it's on there, for some reason, like the second pour isn't as bad as the first and the third pour isn't as bad as the second. And it just wasn't as bad. And you're like, oh, okay, I think I'm getting better. Like, right. And when you're a little kid, you're like, oh yeah, mom, it's healing, right? Like I'm getting better. So in terms of real estate, for us, it was like, we bought in November, had that property like ready to be rented out in February. We didn't leave until March. And that's when we did end up getting back into the door-to-door industry where Corey, you and I met. So I'm glad that we did get back into it. But we got out in March, and then in April we put under contract a quadruplex, and we closed on that quadruplex in May. So in a matter of 6 months, roughly 7 months.
Yeah, right out of the gate.
Yes, we had a quadruplex put under contract, so we had scaled from 1 to 5, and that was a great deal. We actually put 2 under contract. If I'm being transparent, we backed out of 1 because we learned that it needed a little bit more work than what we were wanting to deal with, and it was exposed to water and stuff, and so both these deals they were right next to each other. They're in the same complex, but one of them had a roof that hadn't been replaced in 2 years. And if you know anything about that, the South, right, or that weather that gets down there, like there's a lot of moisture, and I'm really glad that we didn't buy that because
the quads were also in Florida, correct?
Correct, yeah, and that's a big thing. Is we just wanted to make sure that if our first multifamily deal, we wanted to expect the worst, but like have our preparations get us into the best possible thing, like seamless, not having to deal with we didn't want to take on all the roles of a new landlord right off the bat. We were like, if we can find one that just we can focus on tenants, not property as much, that is a good start for us. So
that's a great idea. Not stretching yourself too thin on something like that. I feel like there's 2 camps, and I feel like one camp is dive right in, just freaking go balls to the wall, don't look back. But you got to be pretty analytical when it comes to that stuff, because I feel like you could have easily burned yourself pretty bad by just simply signing on that second property and just saying, "Oh, wait, let's just do it. Let's go from 1 door to 9 doors. Let's make it happen." But that's not the way sometimes. Yeah.
No, you're exactly right.
You got to protect what you've got.
You do, and
there is such a thing as growing too fast.
Absolutely. And those growing pains we did experience, and one thing that we were able to capitalize on right away is understanding that like we could not just do this on our own, like with our own time. We had to start systematizing. We had to immediately start creating systems, and that was huge. In fact, Corey, honestly, when we put these deals under contract, we didn't even have all the funds at the time. We just were like, we're going to get this deal under contract, and then we're going to put our noses down and figure out how to get these funds. So that's another side of the story that I think it's good for the listeners that are wanting to get into real estate. Like, fortunately, we were in a job, and we were hustling really hard, and we knew that we had money generating, and we were waiting on a couple different checks to hit. But at the time, we didn't even have the funds. So there was this anxiety level of like, I have this under contract. I secured the deal. I'm getting approved through the bank, and I just need to make sure I've got enough for this like down payment and a little bit of some, right? Like I've now realized I need to have a little bit of a reserve. And so, at the time we didn't even have it all. And so it was a little bit of a anxious time for us, I guess, but we just put our noses down, and we were like, hey, you know what? Like, we're going to figure out how to get these funds. Like, we're going to just keep working hard. We're going to keep grinding. Like, this is what we want, right? Our identity has shifted to now we're like, we want all these passive income streams. And so we knew what we wanted, and that didn't, like, the work that we needed to put in to get to where we needed to be didn't seem like work. It was seemed like just part of our nature, right? Because we had shifted our identity, we had shifted our goals, we had already known what we were going to do, what we wanted to have happen. So whatever it took to get there didn't matter. Like, it was not work. It was just like, we just need to do this. This is part of what we need to do to get to where we need to be.
That is impressive, man. I'm analyzing myself right now. If I would have had the cojones to do that, just jump right into it, because it ultimately paid off for you guys. I'm so glad that it worked out. That was amazing, and the timeline worked out. And there's so much of that is just having known the process and knowing that you could comfortably get through that process and have the funds available. There's some confidence involved there. That's impressive.
Absolutely, right? And, to anybody that's wanting to invest and get into, passive income sources and things like that, especially in real estate, it is important to be in a vehicle that allows you to do that, right? Like, you can't be working a job that requires, all this time and does not reward you for it. And therefore, you're not able to go and make yourself an asset to yourself, right? Like, you can't even be your greatest asset because you're an asset to somebody else. And so,
yeah, no, exactly.
It's super important.
I think you go to that point is exactly why I'm still, the door-to-door sales is my main source of income right now, because I see it specifically as that. I see it as a vehicle to get me to where I want to be. And it's a great vehicle because it's not trading time for money necessarily. It's full commission based, which means that I get out of it what I put into it. But that also doesn't mean that I am working 8 hours for peanuts. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's really great. It may get difficult on the mind and on the psyche to go out and knock doors and go work for, a handful of hours each day. But changing my mindset and seeing it as the vehicle to get me to the end point of real estate, having a great portfolio of assets that are growing and appreciating over time. I can only get there one way, and I need to have a good amount of capital to do it. Right now, door to door is going to get me there. So like you were just saying, you've got to see it as a vehicle. It's got to be a tool, not something that holds you back.
Right.
And that could be your 9 to 5 for some people too. Your 9 to 5, you could 100% see your 9 to 5 as a vehicle. You may not be doing it because you absolutely love data entry or you absolutely love your desk job, but when you start to see it as the vehicle that will get you to financial freedom, it may just be the launch pad, it may be the very first step, but making that mind shift, that mindset change, and seeing it to be a vehicle to get you where you want to be, I mean, it might make the days go by a little quicker, if nothing else.
Hey, and that may be just good enough for some. And to that point, Corey, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's true. Like, whenever I had made a sale or I had made, these commissions that we were making, and granted, in this industry, you can make some very healthy commissions. You at times, upward of $10,000, right, on a single deal. And so when you have some of those hit, my mind didn't go to, oh my gosh, I just made this money, right? I should go and buy these sweet shoes, or even, and I may get judged for this, but I should go take my wife out to this nice dinner. Like, no, it was, I am $10,000 closer to what I need to be at to get into this deal, to have this deal locked down. And fortunately, my wife and I had communicated, we were on the same page, so we did celebrate later after the deal was done. But on the way there, it was like, hey, like, bang, we're just moving. And work, like, my whole entire perspective changed about work, right? Like, it had nothing to do with, like, oh, I got to go out and work, or, oh, I got these appointments, or, oh, I have this or that. It was like, I need to go, I need to get to these. Like, I need to go. Like, nothing else is more important to me right now than this. Like, honestly, Corey, to some extent, at times, not even the deal, right? Like, I was always analyzing my deal, right? I was always had it on my mind, but that was my driver, right? But I probably could have been putting, systems in for marketing, but like that just wasn't on my mind. What was on my mind is I need to get one step closer to this deal. And what I need to do right now is get the income or get the funds to do it. And so work didn't seem like work to me. It just seemed like, man, every time I got a deal, or every time I went and worked, or every time I got a lead, or every time I had something that sometimes didn't even transpire to income, it didn't matter. I just felt like I was gaining momentum with every piece of success that I did, even getting out the door. Just even getting out the door. And for some people, like, take that in. Just getting out the door sometimes, right? Like, can be considered a success, depending on what industry you're in. And that was what I needed. But what I needed was something, a vision, something to look at, to like give me a reason to do all of that. And it changed my entire perspective. I became a better asset in the workplace for those who I'm working with, became a better asset to myself, and I was able to acquire a great asset.
I'm in the exact same boat right now, and just by seeing it as a tool to get me there has already made me a more efficient door-to-door in the door-to-door sales industry, and specifically for our niche right now with solar sales. It's been a great it's been a great motivator, because you start to see things 5-10 years down the road, and every time I get a commission check, I am now seeing it as like, well, that could be that there's a 15% down payment on X $100,000 home. Like, right. You start to see it as, oh, there's a down payment check, or there's a renovation a fund for a project or whatever. You start to see it in a different way, and it makes you grind. There's been a switch that's flipped in me within the last month or so, and that has been a really big determining factor for me. It's nice to see, that's why one of the things I'm excited about working with you, Jordan, on this project, on this podcast specifically, is because I feel like we're in really similar stages of life. You're a little bit ahead of me on the amount of doors and the properties you own, but it's such a driving force to know that I have somebody there on the other side of the podcast that I can bounce ideas off of and use as a tool. And that's what I hope for the listeners too. I hope you can see these conversations between Jordan and myself, and when we start bringing on future guests, to bounce ideas off of. Throw us your problems, throw us, solutions, and let's find out what deal works for you guys, because there's always a way around it. I've been talking to a handful of people here in the market that I'm in now in Utah that deal specifically with creative financing, and it's blowing my mind at the conversations I'm having with these people, that like, money is so accessible right now for some of these real estate projects, and I did not realize that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago. I did not realize it, and I'm slowly realizing it now, and it's so eye-opening to realize the opportunities that are out there if you just know where to look, you know how to market yourself, you know how to get the job done, and you have an end goal in mind, you have an identity in mind. There's an amazing amount of possibilities right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, having the listeners, send in their issues and their problems, or not, issues, but their problems or questions or concerns. I love that, because that even helps me, right? And Corey think a little bit more in depth about what we're doing, our process and systems. And I hope that as we share ours, that y'all are able to as well capture, content that helps you guys get into your first, whatever that is, your first real estate deal, your first investment. And it's a snowball effect, right? I mean, going back into the deal, fortunately, we were able to get that deal systematized, and Corey, as we told you, and you were part of, we were closer friends and part of each other's lives a little bit more once we did these, last deals that we just recently did. But in November, so essentially a year, right, from the first deal we closed, we put another 12 units under contract in that same complex and close on them in December. So in a year and a month, we went from, 0 to 17 units. Zero
to 17. There's the title of the episode right there.
Yeah. 0 17, almost 100, right? 0 to
Yeah,
100.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
wish. I wish. No,
That's-
we're getting there.
that's-
We're working on it.
Now, for this last deal with the 12 units, was it a pretty similar setup as the quad? Did you finance it the same similar way? Did you reach out to some investors? Were you able to have? Was there any creative financing involved, or was it as simply as the quad, a down payment and then finance the rest?
Yeah, no, it was similar to the previous quad. So after our, cash deal in the house, we we realized that hey, we could really start using leverage. That's a crucial term here in real estate. And so we did. We started borrowing from, the bank. And at the time when I looked at the first quad, I'd reach out to multiple lenders, multiple insurance agents, and I took the time to really interview them, right? And I know that, I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but like I felt like I was interviewing the brokers and figuring out like, okay, yes, it is important that I get a good deal. That is an important thing to me. I want to make sure that I, have my numbers right. So when I analyze this deal and the quotes that I get back and the interest rates and all these things, that it puts me in a place of positive cash flow, obviously, right? However, I also was, in my mind, formulating a team, right? So when I talk to these mortgage brokers or these insurance brokers, what I was doing is, and I don't know if they know this or not, but I was creating my team. I was like, okay, I need to find my team. I need to find my crew that every time I have a deal come up, I don't have to go through this process ever again. Now, obviously, I will probably have to do that, right? But my whole goal was I want to find someone that I can like work well with, that when I need something, they can get it to me promptly. And when they need something, I can, get it to them promptly. And we can work very good as a team. And find somebody that can help me really scale out. And so fortunately I was able to find some really good brokers in helping me get to my next 12, and I knew right where to go, right? Like it wasn't even oh my gosh, I gotta start from square one. It was like, no, I've already established these relationships. And by the way, Corey, some of these brokers I probably drove crazy, because I looked at multiple deals and I hit these brokers up all the time. And part of building my team, and I would encourage listeners to do this, is I didn't wait till I found my deal to start doing that. And I know it sounds like I had done that, but I'd looked at multiple deals before I'd put this first quad under contract, and I had them give me quotes on those deals over and over and over again, to the point where I already knew before I called, or I had a pretty dang good idea where I was going to be at. It was just like, hey, I have another one. I need a quote. Can you get it to me? And as long as it fell within those terms, like I knew or not. And then I, come to find out, oh, there's other things about this property that I am going to pass on. But I had just grilled them, and I'm sure I drove them crazy. They probably were wondering, when is Jordan ever going to come to fruition, right? Like, when is he going to get me my commission? I've been busting butt. And so fortunately I did that, and I've done it over and over again for him a couple times now. So the trust is there. But that was an important thing for me, right? Was finding somebody that was willing to work and like keep working even until I was ready, right? And I felt confident in a deal. And so getting into these next 12, I knew right where to go. I had that stuff, or I had that, those relationships systematized to the extent where it's like, okay, I have an idea of where I'm going to be out on interest. I have an idea of where I'm going to be out on insurance. I know that these things need new roofs, so I know that those will affect the insurance in these ways. I know that the state of Florida has already have insurance issues, so I need to do these things to make sure, I'm in a lower premium bracket so that I can make sure that my cash flow is good. So I already had a lot of those things, but it came from a constant like grilling session, right? Or sessions of, hey, I got another deal. Can you get me a quote? Hey, I got another deal. Can you give me numbers? Hey, got another deal. Give me the numbers. And that was super big for me, gaining those relationships with people. And so when I did find these 12 units, put them under contract, like, it was seamless. It was seamless. I had everything organized, and I knew where I needed to go. I knew what I needed to do. And now I'm going through those growth spurts of, right? Like the whole portfolio grew 75%, right? In a matter of, right. Yeah. In one deal, it grew 75%. And so I've definitely over the last few months had to really like tighten down on systems and start making, a lot harder decisions with property management and with how I handle tenants. I used to have somebody that would go and collect the rents, deposit into an account. That's not going to work overnight. So I had to figure out, an online system. Avail is a great tool that I use. Avail is essentially a online property management software, and really what it does is it just allows you to collect rents online and allows you to have maintenance reports, have communication with your tenants. And I had to do that, and it was a transition for these tenants because they were used to the old school, I'm just gonna write a check or Zelle or do a cash. And it was like, nope. And I had to do that, Corey, because at some point you realize that you're not doing a hobby anymore, right? You're running a business. And that was super important for me to turn that over in my head. As much as I wanted to stay like on the hobby side of things and save a couple bucks or do what, I had to realize these are people's lives, right? Also, this is my life and my interest. And this is not just a hobby type of attention thing. Like, this is a business. It does require the right systems and time put into it. And so if I could figure out how to get a lot of these things automated and get a lot of these things systematized to where I personally didn't have to invest as much time and run this thing like an actual business, I could hopefully see the fruits of it, right? Of the labor that I put into it.
Exactly. Seeing your identity again as the main driver for that, knowing that, man, hiring somebody to go out and collect checks off the doorstep is really a waste of my time. There's an easier way to do this. Dude, I'm blown away right now. You've been dropping some absolute golden nuggets on this whole process. He answered questions I didn't even know I had, especially with the building the team side of things. I never considered doing that, but if you as a listener are planning on, making 2023 the year that you do your first fix and flip or you purchase your first property, and you are going to go the traditional route of getting a broker, doing a mortgage on the house and then going through insurance and all that stuff, that was invaluable insight. Build your team first. Start shopping around, because like you say, the way you put it, that you were interviewing them, I don't know. It just never occurred to me to be it that way, but it truly is. You're building a team to the point where it's somebody that you could send an email to at 7:30 at night about some details, and you could get an answer in the morning when they show up to the office. That is something that, now you can't be a tire kicker, obviously. You got to be a trigger puller.
Absolutely.
they're gonna get mad at you. But to have that resource available is very, very valuable. I'm gonna start doing that myself. I'm making that a part of my process now. I'm gonna reach out and I'm gonna start building my team.
Well, and in turn, you build relationships with people that, who knows, could introduce you to other groups of network. In fact, the gal that was collecting my rent at the time, my vulnerability of that was, okay, if I scale up and for some reason something doesn't go right with this one lady that's going around collecting my rents, who's going to collect my rents?
Yeah, who's my fall? Yeah, what's the fallback?
But
God, that's true.
I always treated her well. I still continue to this day treat her well. She's still a part of my team, not as major of she doesn't play as major of a role, but she's still part of what I consider my team. But she's the one that introduced me to the guy that I bought these other 12 units from, right? Like, without her,
dude, there you go.
I would have not even been into the deal. And these, by the way, were off market, right? Like, he had no intention of selling them. She introduced me to him. I got on a phone call with him. I just started building my relationship, base with him, like I try to do with everybody. Get to know him, be very authentic, let them know about me, and one thing led to the next, and all of a sudden it was like, well, let me know when you're ready to sell those 12, those 3 buildings of yours. And he's like,
oh man,
well, funny you mention, they're not for sale, but, and all of a sudden, they're sold. And you know what's even crazier about it, Corey? And this is something that I won't go into just yet. I'm gonna wait on it. But we're already working with the same seller on another deal. with
Bingo.
4 more buildings. So I'm not going to get too much
Bingo.
into it, but again, building
The
those
snowball
teams
is a
crucial.
rolling. That's amazing. Good work, man. I really appreciate you going in on a deep dive on some of these things because, I mean, they've come up in our conversations organically and we've talked a little bit, but it's really nice to sit down and hear about the details of it, the ins and outs and everything that you guys went through to get to where you are today. And, man, the fact that, like you say, a year and a month, 13 months to go from 0 to 17 is incredible. It is incredible. One quick question I had just to cover off this topic. When you were building your team and working with mortgage brokers and you were working with insurance agents, were you looking for these team members anywhere near where the rental property was going to be, or were you looking locally where you live for these team members, or does it matter?
No, that's a really good question. And to be honest with you, both. I did take the time to do both. Now, I'll tell you, kind of like, quarterback has his checks, right? He'll look at one target and then check down. And so it was kind of the same thing with this, right? Is I knew that my first look was going to be local. Like I want that to be the case because they know the area, right? Like it's hard to take an insurance company, and I have a great buddy who
local to the unit, right?
Local to the unit, correct? Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a really good buddy that owns a brokerage, out of state from where my units are, and I really wanted to do deals for him. And it's funny because he's the one that actually gave me that advice. He says, Jordan, I'd love to insure your units, but I do not know the exact coverages you're going to need. And I can do it. I can look into it, but you're going to want to get somebody local that knows what you're going to need there. And so that's coming from a buddy, and somebody who owns a brokerage. And I'm super grateful for that advice, because he could easily have overlooked wind coverage, whereas he could have just put in hurricane coverage. And those are 2 different things, right? In the state of Florida. So they're 2 different coverages, and it's super easy to miss one of those things when you're not there local and know the area and what needs to be insured. And so it's super important, and I'm grateful for that advice because, establishing relationships with where you're buying with people that know the area is crucial, right? Especially now, I've kind of had baptism by fire, so to say, in the real estate game because all of my rentals are all long distance. When we bought our first quad, we had already moved back to the West Coast, and when we bought these other 12 units, we were also living on the West Coast. So we are now running, really an out-of-state business, and it's crucial to have network relationships and people you can count on there local that can know the area, know how to handle those type of issues that are brought up over there.
I'm glad you nailed down that question for me. That was great. Jordan, man, I can't thank you enough for dropping the knowledge and giving us some insight into your deals. I'm excited to see all you've got done in the last year, and I'm excited to see what this year is going to bring, especially now that I can pick your brain, and I'm just going to ride those coattails, man. I can't wait.
Hey, hop on, man. Hop on, and then when you're ready, start pushing with me.
I'll start pushing eventually. Oh, yeah. I'll start pushing just as much. That's for sure.
Well, that's what's right, Corey, is,
yeah.
we're going to get into what you're doing, on another episode, but, I've focused a lot more on long-term multifamily, and it's crazy because now, we were talking off camera a little bit about a deal that was brought up to me that was just another quad, and I was like, man, I can't even look at going to just one quad. Like now I have to go. My identity is raised, right? My visions have gone higher and grander, and so I can't really process like taking one quad now because it's like, well, for the systems I have in place with property management and maintenance, like I have to go bigger. Like I have to keep, 12 units. I've got to keep something to keep these guys, employed.
Yeah, you've got to make it worth the expansion effort for sure. Yeah, you like you were saying before, you don't want to stretch your team that you have now. You don't want to stretch them too thin. either.
Right. Correct.
Because it's either go big and build a whole separate team for a separate unit or a separate process for that whole new purchase, or you're stretching your existing team way thin and then you're just causing problems for yourself.
But it's incredible because, as, we were talking, off camera, I'm super intrigued with what you're doing, and it's like a new design of the game of what I'm already doing. And there's an aspect there that, I'm going to be riding on your coattails with, and I'm super excited to learn from you with what you've got going on with your, your portfolio and what you're looking at doing. And again, I don't want to spoil it for the listeners, but there's some exciting stuff that I'm excited to get involved in with you on. So
no, it'll be good. I'll be spilling the details, and it'll be fun to share my side of the thing too, because like you said, there's a couple ways to skin a cat right now in the real estate game, and I'm definitely going about it in a really kind of a not traditional way. I'm hoping that it pays out. It's kind of a throwing a dart at the dartboard and see where it lands, but things are working out, and there's a lot of good promising aspects of it, and I'm learning things just in this episode that I'm going to start applying to my deals too. So I appreciate that. For the listeners, you guys, we hope you learned something from this episode. We hope that you were able to learn something from Jordan's insight. Again, think about what you, as a listener, think about what you were doing in November of 2021, right? That wasn't that far ago. That wasn't that long ago. Think about what was going on in your life. And to go from then to now, if Jordan can accomplish it, if I can accomplish what I've accomplished in a short amount of time, you can easily do it too. And that's the whole goal for this podcast. We want to lay it out in terms that it gives you the green light. It gives you the steps to move forward, because so much can be accomplished in such a short amount of time if you just do it. And we're excited about this podcast. We're excited about the growth, the opportunity that it's going to give us, and that it's going to provide you guys, the listeners. Jump on and give us a subscribe on YouTube. We're publishing these podcasts in a visual format as well as an audio format. YouTube is going to be our main platform for the video, obviously. And then we are going to be on every major podcast platform out there. That's our goal. Listen to us, subscribe to us, like us, give us a review, give us some feedback. We would love to hear from you guys, and it's necessary for our growth.
That's right. Thanks, guys. We are looking forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate those inspired questions and the opportunity to share a little bit about what I'm going on about doing, and looking forward to having you share what you have going on in the future weeks.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate it, man. We'll chat next week.
Let's do it.
Thanks, guys.